Hi everyone, it's Alex, the Mad Cartographer, and today I am making a little video as a demo walkthrough of one of my latest maps, the Mad Cartographer's Maze. This map has a very special place in my heart for me. This took me months to make. Anybody that was there at the beginning knows that I started this around about July 2020 and it finished January 2021. So on and off when I was making it around other themes. It took a while to get there. Not just the design process, sitting down working out the layout, what I wanted the flow of the maze to be, because this isn't just a maze with loads of random areas. There's a very specific flow of how this maze could, should and would be played, which is why I'm making this video, to kind of explain that and talk about in more detail what I've put in a journal entry. So there's a journal entry that comes with this Foundry map pack, and it kind of ties through with this labeled map that kind of guides you through it. But this video is going to be a bit more concise. This map was made for Foundry, 100%. The things that make this map so unique, and not just the walling, not just the dynamic lighting, the module that I've used with the KLG's token attacher module makes this a very unique map, and you can only do this in the Foundry. So it took a long time to kind of put it all together, work out how it was all going to work, and then add in the extra cool stuff like the animated elements. These areas very significant to this particular module and this map. So the map, as you can see, fully walled. We've got some animated elements up here. These lightning effects were created by Ben and Jules of JB2A. Jules and Ben's animated assets. They do animated stuff like spell effects, things like that. Great for Foundry. Worth checking them out. There's a link to them in my journal entry on Foundry, and you can check them out on my website post as well, my Patreon post. But for now, let's talk about everything else. So this is a big map. This is 40 squares by 80 squares. Each one of these tiles is 2.5 feet. So like this area is 10 feet. Yeah. So 2 squares is 2 tiles is 1 inch square. However, there's no scale on this map in particular. So if you wanted to, you could double up and make each one of these tiles a 1 inch square, and it would double the size. So you would then go from having a 40 by 80 square map to an 80 by 160. But that changes things, and there's a reason why that I've made it the size that I've made it. But we'll get to that. So, other than pretty animations, cool walling, lots of detail, you know, nice areas, there is a very specific thing with this map that makes it different to everything else. So this maze isn't simply wandering around trying to find your way out of the maze, okay? In my mind, and you can do it differently, but this is the kind of whole thought process with how this was made. These stairs here, this is the way into the labyrinth. Your players are going to be coming here for a very specific reason. It's not somewhere that they've just wandered into. This is the way into the labyrinth. It is also the way out of the labyrinth. But so they're coming down here for a very specific reason. They've got to find something, they've got to kill something, they've got to do something. And how you kind of go about that is up to you. I've not made an adventure for this, I've just got map notes. I will be doing an adventure at some point, but I'll talk about that at the end of this video if you are interested. So with this map, the players will come in through this area, and I'm going to keep this walling up so you can kind of see where it's closed off. So this is the entrance to the maze. Now, as you can see, where all the walling is, there's only this area that they can access. Everything else is closed off, and this area here, which funnels into this little 5-foot gap here. The reason for that is that all this central area is 10 feet wide, and that is to accommodate a large creature, such as a Minotaur. you can't have a maze or a labyrinth map without the a Minotaur being a core element to it. I mean, you can, but in my mind, you wouldn't. So for me, the Minotaur that would be on this map, he is unkillable, or you can reduce him to 0 hit points, and he might be kind of like unconscious for a set number of rounds and stuff. But he should be really strong. He should be a constant threat for this dungeon. That's the whole point of a Minotaur being in a maze. You know, if you kill it and it's just a normal Minotaur and you kill it the first time you see it, then you know that's pretty boring. If it is this Mr. X Resident Evil style dude that just comes crashing around all the time, and you're like, we gotta run. There's no point fighting this guy. We just need to run. Then it's suddenly more interesting, especially if he is a hard hitter. So because he can travel around all these 10-foot areas, he can't get through a 5-foot. I mean, you could try and squeeze, but he doesn't. Okay, he's not a sensible guy. So you've got all these side areas where you don't have to deal with the Minotaur. And this central area here, you can get out, but the Minotaur can't get back in. So you can have a bit of a rest in here. You can take short rests, potentially long rests as well. So that's the purpose of the scale, why this is 10 foot wide as opposed to it being, you know, every tile is 5 foot. Then that would make that 10 foot wide, so the Minotaur could get in here, which we don't want to happen. However, you can get out. You've got all this area around here that you can navigate. You can kind of go into these areas. You can go into these areas where they're locked off with doors. The purpose of what you're trying to do, what your players are trying to do, is to find these 3 areas with these kind of turn wheel, portcullis type giant wheel things where these cogs are. And when they find one, and when they turn one, something very beautiful happens, and it will happen off screen. Okay, they wouldn't see this because they would be in this room over here or in this room over here. But what happens is when they activate one, this central room turns. It turns 1/4 for each time you've activated one. So you control mouse wheel and you just rotate that little hidden cog there. Some of you may have seen this stuff. You're doing this with Token Attacher in my Urban Exteriors module. And the walls are attached to it. So the walls have now rotated with the actual tile. The players don't know that, so when they feel like they've done everything they can and they come back into this area, they may suddenly be like, hold on, it wasn't that column in a different direction before? And, whoa, what's this? This little room's opened up and the entrance or the exit to the labyrinth has now closed off. And this area is opened up. So this is the thing with this maze. Each time they find one of these portcullis wheels, it turns the maze and opens and closes off different areas. So when the players go into this area, you've got this kind of large. I call this the garden wheel. I've got the fire wheel. I've got the water wheel, and then we've got the garden wheel. I'll talk about the other ones in a moment. But for this one, we've done something similar again. So the players will go in here. You know, you can be placing around whatever you want in these little gaps and stuff. If you want monsters, if you want puzzles, if you want loot, traps, everything. You know, there's enough blank space to kind of fill it with whatever you want. But the players can kind of navigate through and they can find this little interesting feature room. I think these feature rooms should have something special. There should be something cool. These should be the main areas where you are putting something. But then there's this second feature room that they can't get in. There's no access to it. You follow the maze round and there's no into it. Now I would put something like a glyph or a carving on this wall here to denote that there's something beyond it, but you don't know how to get there. Then the players would naturally follow through here. And again, this maze isn't for people to just get lost. That's boring. People wandering around not knowing what to do and taking rounds and rounds and rounds just moving around. It's not interesting. I would have threats. I would have puzzles. I would have traps. And you kind of want these dotted throughout. So everywhere you go, there's something interesting. If there's a reason that they're getting lost somewhere, then there needs to be a reason for it. Why? You know, don't get them lost just for the sake of getting lost. It's good to have them confused and stuff. With this particular area, it is to encourage exploration. Okay, they will be rewarded by going back to places they've been. So as I said, this This area here is where you would go through. This area is where you come out, but this area is blocked off, and you can't get into this area. You've got this little feature room here that you can't get into. When you trigger this portcullis and it turns that central tile, what it also does is moves the whole wall down, moves it down 5 feet. What this has now done, it has opened up this area, and it has opened up this area to leave this garden wheel area. So then you can go back in, and you can go back into the main part of the maze, and this will have obviously turned. Now, depending on which iteration you're on of this turning, you might still be able to get back in here. And if you do decide to go re-exploring, going back over lost ground, like if you had these, the glyph that was there on that door, on that wall, that little marking, sorry, on this one here, if you had it on that wall there and on that wall there, and then when this all moved and they see that this has opened up, they will then realize, oh, that other wall will have opened up as well. So then if they go back round, then they can get into this cool area. There should be something very special in this one. However, depending on where this is rotated, you can only access this area the first time that this has been turned, and then you can access it if it's been turned a second time. It's still open. But if you go in it if you've activated both of these two at the bottom, you've activated both of those, and then you go into this area and you turn the wheel, then this third turn means that whilst you can escape the garden wheel area, that area is now closed. You won't be able to get back in. So what players really want to do is activate one of these wheels, go into the garden area, activate it, and then go back through to go next. So it's just this kind of little different route through the maze that can be done, this little extra exploration thing. Not necessary, not vital. There shouldn't be anything in here that stops players from being able to progress. It should just be some cool loot, and it's very lucky if they decided to do it that way. So that's the garden. That's the garden area. So we've got this long wall that kind of unlocks all these little areas, and you've got these glyphs to say like, "Hey, this opens," and then once one of them opens, like, "Oh, the other one will have opened as well. Let's go and find it." So that's the idea with that. Then we've got the fire room. So at the beginning, when you've done the first turn, let's just turn it. There we go. So this is the starting. The starting position is this column pointing to the northwest. So this bottom area is open, which means they can access the fire wheel or the water wheel. The fire wheel is up to you. It doesn't need to necessarily be that way, but in my mind it was that when the players go in here, the floor starts setting on fire. The walls and the floor and everything, the whole corridor starts setting on fire, and they are kind of funneled into this area and they're trying to escape it. And then because the fire is spreading along the floor like it's all coated in something or it's lined with whatever, the fire is chasing them. It's going to keep spreading onto each tile, and you'd be filling the tiles with fire as they go. The idea is that if they kind of like double back on themselves and get lost, then the fire is kind of like catching them up, especially when they get to this area. When they get to this area, they want to go right and out, but they don't know that. If they go left and they go further into this area, then by the time they've kind of navigated it and got lost and then come back round and come back out, this fire could have spread and caught them. Okay, so it's kind of spreading everywhere, and they might have to like run through fire. That's the idea for this room, the fire room. They get to this area, when they turn the portcullis wheel, then obviously it will turn that central tile, and it unlocks these two doors. And there's two doors, and they don't know what's behind them. And in this one, there's going to be a load of baddies. If you unlock this one, then all these baddies pour out, and then you have to fight a load of baddies. Unlock this one, and you can progress. This room is where I imagine you would first come across the Minotaur. I imagine he's just kind of like lumbering around here. Whether he's an undead, whether he's a construct, whether he's, kind of like demigod, part immortal, or something like that. I don't know. It should be tough. Or he might just have like crazy regen that brings him back from 0 hit points. You can't kill him. Decapitate him and he's just going to grow a head or a spectral head or something like that. There's like certain things that you would need to change for this adventure. Stuff like spells. You know, you can't let players be able to use knock. You know, there should be like wards and glyphs around this entire area. You know, they can't pass through walls and things like that because you don't want to put anything in place that's going to negate the entire mechanics and point of the maze. You know, if this big massive structure has been made, then it's been made by somebody that probably knows, you know, what kind of spells exist in the world, and they would put things to the effect where you can't do that. You've got some little kind of altar rooms. Like I said, there's a few little feature areas where you might want to put your own cool stuff in. Then we've got the water room. So this is the third turn portcullis wheel. Now, with this one, obviously the entire maze is in darkness. So depending on what your light sources are, there's torches throughout. But in this area, all the torches are out, and the players don't know why. There's little puddles of water near these grids in the floor. And when the players are walking around, this door is unlocked. So this is where they would come in. So they would come in here, find this door, come inside, yeah, shut it, and I think that's picked up the sounds of the cogs. You get this sound of these cogs in the different areas, and if they've already triggered the other wheel, they might know, like, hey, we need to get access to that wheel. You know, do we kind of go all around and try to find it, or does your wizard, being the sneaky that he is, just use blink? Because these are like bars in the wall, so you describe them as they walk past. You can see these bars in the wall, and you can see them, and they might blink through and think, there we go, we've bypassed everything. I'll just turn the wheel, and then we'll just go out, and we'll kind of do that. And that's what I expect players to do, because I know that's what I do, because I'm a sneaky player. However, in doing such a thing, the DM, once this is turned, every time you turn these, something else happens. It's going to turn that central tile. But with this room, you would turn the tile, that door locks. You could effectively, if you wanted to, remove this sound, and then kind of explain that the gears all start seizing up and water starts flooding into the room. Now this is just a tile, so once you hide it, the players, it is still showing because I'm the DM, but on the players thing, they can't actually see it now. So that shows that all the cogs have stopped. So you can't hear the sound, the cogs have stopped, and then we go into our little actors our actors panel, and we can drag on the maze water area. Little selection, drop in this bottom corner, and this area is now, players can hear the water bubbling. It's like underwater, but then the DM would have to go to this tile and reveal it, and now the players are suddenly in an underwater area as this room, this entire area, suddenly floods with water. Now, as with the other glyphs and stuff, we have, this is the exit here, so you'd have something on the wall if they navigated the area and found it. With the tiles and stuff, you should always make sure that you hide them when you place them, so the players don't see this big cog icon. If the players played fair and they navigated it as they're supposed to, they might have come across this little glyph, and then when they turn it, you know, the door is open and then they can find their way out. However, if they decided to not explore the area first and turn this, they are suddenly underwater. Your man here is underwater and isolated from the rest of the group. We're at the beginning of this maze area, so I have to find all this stuff underwater. They're not going to be able to get back to them because you need to cast blink with a verbal component, so they can't get back, so they're separated. If you put stuff like quippers and stuff coming out of these grates, or, you know, eels or whatever you want to put out, you know, watery oozes if you feel like, start putting some threats, so they're fighting stuff under the water, and they are trapped under the water. There's no surface here, and they've got to try and find their way out. And then when they do, they will kind of unlock this door, and then they will come out, and then they are back into this area. So that's the idea for that one. Let's get rid of this. Bubbling. I can hear the noise still bubbling. And with these tiles, with these tokens, sometimes they can misalign slightly when you move them around a lot, particularly the central tile. But everything's placed in the actors token, so you can always drag and drop it on and replace it, so you don't have to worry too much about it. But we can delete the entire thing, select the icon, and delete it. So we've then got this area, which is a huge kind of spider colony. These kind of monstrous, kind of medium-sized spiders, just dominating this area. You got a little area over here where some treasure probably, or you know, the bodies entangled, all kind of cocooned up of adventurers past. But these spiders will generally kind of stay in this area. They've no reason to kind of travel too far. They can kind of get out through here, but they don't typically just go wandering around the maze for no reason. However, one of the things is with this maze is that if you have taken a lot of damage, or you've been caught by the Minotaur or whatever, and you want to take a short rest or even a long rest, this central area is really the only area that's fully protected. Okay, I would have stuff like, even in this area where it's all seems fine, I would have the leaves and stuff be toxic. Staying in this area too long kind of poisons you or something like that. You feel weak around this area. You want to make everywhere dangerous, and this is your safe haven. Okay, this square right at the beginning is your safe haven. The problem is, depending on how many times you've turned the tiles, so if you manage to find the bottom one and you've turned it once, and then you find another one and you turn it again, what happens is this area, ooh, gone one too far, and one too far again, there we go. This area is now opened up. So when you're trying to rest in here, random dice table while they're taking a long rest as to whether spiders interrupt their sleep, and have them kind of like pouring in. So it's this safe haven has just been removed. Okay, the Minotaur can't get in here, but the spiders now can. So that's the kind of the idea with that, and it adds this extra dynamic, because you don't want people to be able to rest every 5 minutes. You know, you don't want to say, okay, let's just go back to the middle room and rest again. You kind of want to get rid of that that possibility. So what happens is you activate all these 3 different wheels, and then it turns 1, 2, 3 times, and it opens this area. That area is closed off. That area is closed off. This area is open still, so you still can't short rest. So once you've activated all 3, you still got a chance that these spiders are going to come in. They're just going to come in through this area. But this area is now open, and that's kind of what you're aiming for, because it now gives the players access to this top area. Now you'll see that this top area is all 10 foot wide. All 10 foot wide. There's no, apart from this room here, there's no 5 foot areas, because whilst it's opened this area, it's now also opened this wall, and that means our Minotaur can now get in. There's nowhere that's safe now. You know, wherever you're going, this dude is hunting you down, and that's kind of like the end game. You're constantly trying to get away from him. I don't know what these towers do. In my mind, you would have to potentially deactivate them, which might weaken the Minotaur. We've got this whole big giant pit of skulls and bones in the middle area. So I think kind of like deactivating these pylons might be quite cool. It could be that you need to deactivate them to access this area. This area is basically the party splitter room, and whatever you kind of want to put in here. This is the kind of area that they're trying to get to. This is the door that they go through, and kind of going down this area. You know, if they go straight down, cool. You know, they can find it, no problem. If you want, but what's going to happen is if they go this way or they go this way, this wall's going to move. It's going to split them off. Or if they try to go this way, it's going to split them off, and it opens up undead constructs, whatever, that were in this area that were boxed off. It now releases them, and the party's been split. So now part of your party is fighting all this stuff. And that's what this kind of area is for, you know, having a pit trap or having players crushed by these walls. You know, do whatever you want. Have like a trap or monsters in here, and when they see these glyphs and trigger them, you know, they get turned and rotated and pushed into this area. And that's the kind of the concept for this room. This is to try to weaken them up, really soften them up, have that panic moment where they all start getting split up and like, uh-oh, you know, this is going terribly wrong. And so yeah, so that is the concept. I think once you've destroyed or deactivated these pylons, which you can do because these electricity are just tiles, placed tiles that are locked in place so you can't accidentally move them, but you could just hide them if you wanted to. When you've deactivated it, and then you'd have to obviously delete the there you go. You'd have to delete the actual lighting effect as well, so it's not glowing. Or you could keep it on; it wouldn't matter too much. So you can have that kind of impact on it. Now, I will say, in talking about these asset tiles, and I'm wrapping up the video now, coming to the end of it. I hope it was good. This map is very intense. It's going to kill most people, not most people, it's going to kill a lot of people's computers. If you are on a lower end spec computer, you're not going to be running this map as is, okay? The map itself is like 10 megabytes because of the size of it. I've tried to compress it as much as possible using my normal compression methods, but it's just a big map, and there's a lot on it. There's a lot of color on it as well, so you don't get big areas of flat color that generally brings the file size down. So I've got it as low as I can get it without it looking gross. The problem is that there is the animated elements on it. Now these animated elements, these are tiles as well. So you can effectively, if you wanted to, you could remove them, and there will be notes in the journal as to what the position is and the width and everything of these tiles, and you could just delete them. Okay, you don't have to have them on all the time, which will 100% affect the load times for players. It can take a while to load this map, undoubtedly. I myself have to, sometimes it loads at 90%, I have to control F5 it, refresh it, and then it'll load again. So getting players loaded into it for the first time takes a bit of finesse, takes a bit of getting used to, especially depending on how good their system is. But you can remove some of these elements that are very intense. You don't have to have the electricity. You don't have to have that. I do have a version in the pick and mix map pack that is a light version. It doesn't even have the animated light. It has static light. But I'll talk about that in a moment. So you can remove some of these elements. You don't have to have the lightning flashing. You know, you can delete these bits, and you're still gonna have the glowy light effects on the actual map itself, because that's native to Foundry. But you know, it's a big map. It's a big map, and it's a maze, so there's a lot of walling. So you see, even without the lightning, you still got these effects that can do the same thing. Okay, it doesn't have to be lightning. That's just an extra thing if you think your players' PCs can handle it. If your PC can handle it. But yeah, so it's just little extra perks and stuff that are there. But all you really need for this to work is these tiles, these movable tiles. That's the whole point of this map. Unfortunately, for them to work the way they are PNGs with transparency, which again inflates the size of the map. But there are things that you can do to reduce that size. So that's the map. It is currently available as is through my web shop, and it's part of the pick and mix pack. It's also, that pack also includes the inside the giant purple worm map, if you've seen that. So basically you go inside a purple worm, it's all the guts and stuff like that, fully walled out. That is on my web shop, and that is the pick and mix pack. However, that's now been discontinued from my Patreon, so you don't get access to that. On my Patreon, you only get access to one map pack a month, and then they go onto my web shop. The people that have access to them, if you're a long-standing patron, then you get the JSON and you get the manifest, and that never changes. Okay, so you never lose access to content that you've had access to. You always get it. But new patrons that come along, they don't get access to the Foundry back catalogue. They will still get access to the flat maps, but not the Foundry dynamic stuff. However, this labyrinth, this maze map has been made its own JSON, so that it's just a manifest JSON that just has this in it, because I'm going to be turning that into an adventure. It's going to come with tokens and items and a more in-depth adventure at some point. So if you aren't in a big rush to get the map, but you want to have the adventure side of it, then you can get that JSON now through my Patreon. If you just want the map and you want to do your own thing with it, then you can get that through my Patreon, through the individual map, or you can buy the map pack. If any of this sounds confusing, feel free to shoot me a message. I know that sometimes my Patreon can be a little bit awkward to navigate for some people. A lot of people seem to think it's okay, and they get it. But yeah, so this is now available. It will be available through my Patreon till the end of February, and that's 2021, depending on when you see this video. But otherwise, you can buy the Pick and Mix map pack through my web shop, but it is more expensive. It's cheaper to go through my Patreon. That is the perks of being an ongoing Patreon supporter. So there you go, little short plug. I don't want to go too much into it, but hopefully you've enjoyed what you've seen here. I hope you feel excited and enthusiastic to try and run it for your players. I really enjoyed making it. Again, I love Foundry. I love the Foundry community. And from the moment I came up with the idea of, okay, I want to run a maze, I knew that I was going to do something like this, and I knew that it was going to be something that could just highlight the great stuff that is available in Foundry VTT. So thank you guys for watching. Any questions, hit me up, no problem. Check out my Patreon, and as ever, keep rolling those 20s.